Welcome back to the show, you guys. I'm so excited for today's guest. He's somebody I met inside of one of our mutual friends and mentors, Jillian Murphy. Shout out to her. She has a skill like nobody else of bringing really cool, authentic people together into her communities. That's where James and I think, first met or connected on one of her calls in the past. And now we're both inside one of her memberships where she teaches us how to scale your sales. So shout out to her. That was not a plug. She did not pay me, but I'm like, always give credit where credit is due. And James and I ended up in a breakout room where we got to connect a little bit deeper. And he was talking about the things that he coaches and teaches to. And I'm like, we need to have a conversation on the podcast. So, James, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, Jillian does have an amazing gift about just bringing awesome and amazing people into a room together. And I am so stoked to be here hanging out and chatting with you and sharing with your audience today.
I know, right? And I think there's something I want to jump off with right now that you say that no matter what people have gone through and no matter what fears and doubts they may have, that they can create a powerful new identity that can unlock whatever version of success they want to achieve. Let's just get right into it because that for somebody sounds really great. And they're like, yeah, sign me up. But when the actual process of the doing and the becoming starts to come into play, as you know, a lot of people can get in their own way or not actually believe that it's possible for them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I myself struggle with that. I discover, and man, you get to a certain age, you start wanting to hide it a little bit. Like, man, I can't really be that old, am I? But because I'm going to turn 55 next month. But I mean, I've been into personal development for close to 27 years now. And it was one of those things that when I got into it, I started reading the books, and I have audio cassette tape series. That's how long ago it's been when I started listening to this stuff. But I was diving into it, and I could regurgitate all the quotes, all the stuff that's in the books and all of that. But I found myself getting my second divorce, and I found myself still struggling with certain things. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? I thought I had all this shit figured out, but it wasn't actually applying it. And what I finally figured out, it wasn't until I got in a room with actual people and they started sharing their stories. And I saw, well, wait, you went through this and you still made it okay. And you went through this and it was real live people. I don't want to knock what we're doing here, but when you can really get, and this is the power of getting in actual rooms, when you can get in actual rooms with people and it's like, oh wait, I can touch you, I can see you, and you're a real live person, not just this person I see on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube or whatever, but you hear their stories. I'm like, oh, okay, I can actually do this. I can do this. And it still takes work. It still takes a lot of effort, a lot of challenging conversations with yourself, and a lot of uncomfortable moments. But again, just getting in that room and even in Zoom calls, it still helps to be able to share authentically, share openly, and not be judged for it. Because for so long, when we opened our mouth and we talked about the challenges we've gone through, the struggles we've gone through, people would look at us like, ew, I don't want to be around you. You're a weirdo. You're a freak. Or at least that's what we thought would happen. But when you can find spaces like these conversations that you and I are having, today, or getting in spaces like Jillian spaces or Chris and Lori Harder, another mutual community that I think we're both have been a part of, you get in those rooms and people don't judge you because they're on a path of growth, of trying to better themselves, of making a better world for everybody. And those people don't judge. Those people are here to support you and encourage you. And they know the struggles. They've been through them themselves. And they're like, dude, yes, let's talk about this. And so that I think is a huge help to get you there if you're struggling with it.
Yeah. And and I know because we've seen it, one for ourselves now. And two, like you said, getting in the rooms, being around other people where you're like, oh, I'm not different. I may have a different story, but my experience in life, we're all humans. And so I guarantee everybody has a colorful story to share,
Oh, yeah.
whether it's on the spectrum of, going to jail like some of us,
Yeah.
or some of us have raised in families that were very broken. Like there is a story to be told. Some of you even have had great childhoods and still struggle with showing up in the truest form of your identity of yourself, and you're holding yourself back in ways that could be the catalyst for the shift you're probably looking to make in your life or your business. And I myself, same thing, divorce, ended up a single mom, and that was from a second relationship where I didn't get married. And that's when I also started to look at my life of like, what is the common denominator? Me.
Yeah.
Hello, right? And I
Exactly
was
what I
like,
had
okay,
conversations with myself about. I'm that
yeah,
common
and
denominator between
same.
those two divorces. Yeah.
Yes, and my friend and I remember we were very similar to you with ingesting all of the propaganda, the podcast, the books, and we would talk about this work. And it wasn't until I actually paid to get into a room where I sat with 50 other people, and that was the very first round of Chris and Lori's Business Mastermind Fast Foundations, where I was like, I'm not that different. And in fact, I'm not quote unquote just anything. At the time, I was just a hairdresser. I actually am an entrepreneur. I've been in the game for almost 20 years at this point. I have a lot to offer. And so not only did I see my own value, I also saw other people's stories and why it gave them credibility. Even if it was just life experience, it wasn't a degree or it wasn't like I exited a company or I sold this or I'm making X amount of money. It was like your lived experiences can then propel you to have a passion to help somebody else make a shift or a change in their life. And it sounds like that's kind of what happened for you. And seeing that in that room, I remember going back to my best friend at the time and sharing some of the stuff that I had learned. Mind you, I just learned it. I hadn't even really started to integrate it myself. And I remember we got into an argument and I was so shocked because I had spent a lot of money to be in this room and her telling me, "Well, now you just think you know everything." And it was like this really weird combative like and I was like, "No, literally, I don't know shit. I just paid $7,000 to learn this and I'm sharing it with you."
Yeah.
I'm like, "But I'm trying to figure out how do we integrate this and how do I start taking action on all of these things that they're teaching and talking about because they're about 5 to 10 years ahead of me, you know? And so that's where I wanna go, and it really kind of drove a wedge between us because that's when I realized you can ingest, 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 which actually causes more frustration for a lot of people when you don't actually start to integrate and try to change and do these things that you see are working for other people. You know, my mom had given me the CDs for The Secret years prior, and I hadn't really I mean, I'd listened to them, but I hadn't really, like, taken them in, and
Yeah.
that's when I started to separate myself from people who were not open to having these kind of conversations, and unfortunately, that friend and I, we aren't friends anymore, and it was from that point where I was like, I guess this is kind of how it goes. As you start to grow, you will grow out of circles that you were once like a part of or felt comfortable in. And
Yeah.
that's happened at every like kind of new level that I've gone through. Has that happened for you too? Have you had to kind of up level the people you spend time with both personally and professionally?
Absolutely. I refer to it often, one of my all-time favorite quotes, and I remember exactly how he said it, but Jim Rohn, has the quote, "You are the average of the five people you surround yourself, spend the most time with." And it's so absolutely true. I love and cherish the time I spent in the small town that I grew up in and my friends that I had back then. But we spend a limited amount of time together these days. I'll still see them from time to time, but we don't hang out 24/7 like we used to because not that I'm better than them, not that they're worse than me, not that we're different as human beings, but we just have different outlooks on life. We have different ways of seeing the world and seeing opportunities. Because, like you talked about with your friend, it sounds like they were more stuck in, well, it's almost entertainment because it's education without implementation is entertainment. And that's what happens. Some people just want to stay stuck in that entertainment, phase of personal development. They just want to stay stuck in, well, if I just listen to it, it sounds really cool. I can talk, I can sound really smart, and everybody thinks that I'm really cool. But they don't want to get into that uncomfortable mess of shit. I do have to take responsibility for everything in my life. I do have to look at myself and say I was that common denominator in both of those marriages. I can't point the finger at the first one when the second one split up, when I split that one up because they weren't there. And I can't point the finger at the first one when the second one split because they weren't there either. I was that only person there. And every situation that you're stuck in life, or you feel like I'm not moving forward in life, you are that common denominator. And while that may sound scary, it's actually a beautiful, wonderful thing because once you take responsibility for it, and we're not talking about blame, we're not talking about shame, we're not talking about guilting ourselves into oblivion. We're just saying, let me take responsibility for the decisions that I made, the thoughts that I had, the actions that I took. Because once you do that, then you have complete control of shifting everything and creating that brand new life that we're talking about. So, but yeah, absolutely. Like yourself, I've paid to be in rooms and I didn't realize it, but that is where we originally probably had some connection because I actually went through round 2 and 3 of Fast Foundations. I miss you, but I knew you were in that bubble somewhere. It felt like for quite a while. I was like, how the hell are we not friends on Instagram when we finally connected here recently?
That's great. Yeah, actually, I think it was like round 3 that Chris brought me in as a support coach, so I probably just wasn't yours because I was actually
No.
Jillian's.
Okay. Yeah.
And Lori and I go way back, and Lori's been a huge catalyst for me to see somebody who really had to shift identities in order to kind of become the woman that she ultimately wanted and desired to be. And that's where I think, identity plays a big part of it and why I wanted to have this conversation with you and was so excited that we were reconnected on a call a few weeks ago is I don't think people have been using this term often enough. Like I think identity is like a new way to describe who you are and like your
Yeah.
personality or what you're presenting to the world. And I watched her go from having this said identity, which was like this fitness competitor, perfect, but like to be honest, like if you looked at her from afar, 10-time cover magazine model. But deep down, like, now that you hear more of her real raw story, did barely graduate high school, was overweight as a kid. Like she had no business doing the things that she ended up doing, but she decided that there was a path and she was going to chase it and she chased it. And it took somebody believing in her, paying someone to coach her, and so in her sharing those stories over the years and me getting to hear that, I was like, well, wow, if you can do that, I could do something like that. And then when she fully pivoted about 10 years into her business to the personal development space, like that was a whole nother identity shift of like, can I really be somebody who is like a Gabby Bernstein? We put these other people on pedestals because they've gone before us and we think we can't ever match or bring the type of impact that they have. But you have your own unique secret sauce and your own story and your own all of that. And now it's so cool is, you've been on the journey with them for a while. Is like watching people actually step into and own, what they had to go through and grow through and like accept their past for what it was. Like she talks more openly about not graduating high school and or barely like all of those things way more now than she ever did in the early years because I truly believe she was trying to present as someone who had it all together. She looked like it from the outside and clearly she knew that that part of her story was something that could deeply connect with other people. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people miss out on sharing, even when it comes to on stories or social media or anything that they're building, is like leaving out the parts of you that you think are messy or not perfect, because those are actually the things that will connect real humans. Humans want to work with humans. And we were just joking, James and I, before we hit record about like AI songs and AI, memes on social media. And well, okay, it's great. And maybe we can appreciate the art of it. It's people want to connect with people. And I'm not investing in something fake. I want to invest in someone I know who's been through the trenches, who's dug their way out of something, and who has come out on the other side because then I can see myself in that story. And so for you, I mean, tell us a little bit more about your background because for you to be doing this work now, I mean, this passion came from somewhere. So walk us back a little bit about how you got into this work.
Oh, all kinds of fun experiences in my life. So I'll give you some of the fun things that happened. I was adopted. I grew up in a household with an alcoholic father. I got arrested for attempted armed robbery when I was 17 years old. I robbed people with a gun. I had my first kid when I was 21 years old. So yeah, in the early years of my life, it wasn't looking like what I saw on television or in movies. You watch all these things and you think, well, life's supposed to be awesome. And I'll be honest, my son's named Dylan because my favorite show was Beverly Hills 90210, So you watch something like that and you're seeing all these kids out there driving the fancy cars and living the wonderful life, or just even things through the 80s or like earlier points. But when that's not aligning with what you see in reality, you really struggle. You're like, who the hell am I? And it was really, really challenging. And thankfully, I stumbled into a career, and this is a perfect example of what we talked about, with the identity work. I stumbled into a career that taught me about personal development and setting goals and creating a life for myself. And with that career, what it was, I love movies. I've always loved movies, watch them constantly. And I was always at the local movie theater watching movies. And they happened to have a little sign in the door that said, hey, if you love movies, get a job here. You get free movie passes. I'm like, well, dude, that sounds pretty awesome. I'm going to get that. And I just went in. My family already had their own business. So I was already heavily involved in that. Had zero expectation of ever doing anything other than going in a couple nights a week, sweeping up some floors, getting some free movie passes. It's all I wanted. But within 6 months of being in that industry, I loved movies so much. I got promoted through the ranks and they put me in charge of a $14 million facility with 80 employees, having zero background in the industry, having zero background in actual management, because the family business was just like me, my mom, and my dad, and maybe my uncle from time to time. It was a compression molding business. So it wasn't guest facing. It wasn't something like, public facing, anything like that. But yeah, like I say, within 6 months, I got promoted into that position. And then within a year, I got demoted because my identity was still of this person who's not worthy of this. I'm the imposter syndrome. I'm a fraud. They're going to figure out I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. They're going to recognize I'm an idiot. And lo and behold, I lived into that version of myself. And they said, well, we're going to have to demote you. Do you want to stay here in the same building? I'm like, hell no, I can't get demoted in my own building. So I ended up transferring to a different building. And through, a couple of different experiences, I built myself back up in that company and eventually got back into a project manager role. But it's shifting from one position to another position to another position. And like you just talked about with Lori, am I capable of taking this next step? I had to go through that demotion to start questioning myself and wondering, like, wait, am I capable of doing this? And as I took time, I was like, yes, I am capable of doing this. I just needed to give myself that credit. I needed to allow myself to believe it. And then, as I said, I built myself back up into that company, into a project manager role, and got into the areas of the business that I really loved. But when you don't have that strong belief in yourself and you don't build that identity, and I guess this is part of it too. I used to think it was just mindset. But the problem was, dude, I had the most fucking positive mindset you could ever have. I'm always like, it's a beautiful day. Anybody ask me how it's going? It's fucking amazing. That's kind of how I would respond to everything. So I'm thinking, I got a great mindset. But if you don't have that identity below that positive mindset, that's when you say everything on the surface looks wonderful, but behind the scenes, it's all falling apart. Because
Hmm.
when you go home, you're not doing the work. You're not doing the things that you truly need to do. But outwardly, you're projecting that amazing image of everything's perfect, everything's wonderful. Yes. So, yeah, it's been a journey.
Well, and I would say too, in that experience, just looking at it from, a high level, when we experience what feels like failure, right? Getting demoted would feel like, ugh, like you could have easily put your tail between your legs and left and had your ego get in the way and not taking a lesser role at a different building. And I think by doing that, you realize not only two things. One, no, I can do this, but like I want to do this. I think when we force ourselves into anything because we think we should do something, or we get promoted really, really fast and we didn't, quote unquote, maybe like earn our way there or claw our way to the top, if you will, like put the time in. 6 months is pretty quick to move your way up from like just trying to get some free movie passes to like running a project management. Like, what age were you at that? In your 20s?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
28. So,
Yeah, so fairly young. And, I think sometimes when that happens, because I remember early in my career kind of getting pushed to the front real quick as well. And it's hard because sometimes people that are older than you don't want to take direction from you. So then you do start to question, like, am I cut out for this? And at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, if the fight in you like doesn't prove like this, I know I do want to do this, you will sometimes let society or let your thoughts or let those beliefs like kind of drag you back into whatever feels comfortable, which would have been just sweeping the floors, working for your family's business, being good enough, like this will do, and not thinking any more highly of yourself that you're deserving of a bigger and better, bolder life, a bigger role at the company. And now to go off on your own and have this business that you do now, like how did we go from working in corporate to deciding that this identity work was something that you wanted to really help people with?
yeah. So, what it was, like I say, I got into personal development in that position because that's when they first introduced me to Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People and Who Moved My Cheese. I forget who wrote that book, but, one of my managers started giving me books like that or, sharing books like that with me to go out and read and started reading them, started studying them, saw Tony Robbins' late night infomercials and that's when I bought the tape series and was doing all of those things. But fast forward 14 years, I'm getting my second divorce. And literally, like we just talked about before, I had that conversation with myself. There's two divorces, one common denominator. That's me. I got to do something. I got to do something different. I can't just keep sitting here listening to the audio tapes, reading the books. I don't even remember if YouTube was around then yet, but just doing these things. And so I actually put myself in a room of 5,000 incredible lit up souls at a Tony Robbins event, Unleash the Power Within. And I'm like, holy fuck, dude, these are my people. This is where I was meant to be. Oh my gosh. I used to joke too. If this is a cult, pour me another glass of that fucking Kool-Aid, man, because I am all in, but it was going there, getting lit up, getting excited about life, going home, and then thinking I'm going to change the world. Everything's going to be amazing. And then 3 months later, oh shit, I'm back to my same old habits because I'm around the same old people, doing the same old things. I'm going to another event, getting fired up, then repeating that cycle and then recognizing, wait a minute, I got to start surrounding myself with people here locally. And so what I ended up doing, I don't know for sure, you probably know, maybe you don't, but there's a website called meetup.com. You ever heard of it?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, there's all kinds of great communities, groups on that website. And I went on there looking for personal development meetup group because I myself loved personal development, but all I could find locally prior to that was real estate investment associating meetings, networking meetings, great groups, but nothing specifically around personal development. And while I was on the website one night, it said 25 people in your area would like a personal development meetup group. They'd shown interest in it or something. I'm like, well, fuck it, man. If I can't find one, I guess I got to make one. And so I just started my own group. I had no clue what I was going to do. Originally had planned it to be like a little book study group around Jack Canfield's Principles of Success or Success Principles. Yeah, that book. It was going to originally be that. I ended up shifting it, but ultimately I just went into that room and said, I'm going to put on a presentation or I'll bring somebody in. I got in front of the group, said, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. I'm not a coach. I'm not a public speaker. We're going to figure this out as we go. I just want to get people together. And it was through that experience of getting people together and bringing in some speakers from the area that could do presentations. I got more and more comfortable myself with doing them and just seeing how much it changed people's lives and that I could be that catalyst, especially given my history and especially given the story that I had, because we, like you mentioned before, we like to put people on these pedestals and we see somebody like Chris and Lori Harder or Jack Canfield or Stephen Covey or Tony Robbins. And even if you hear Tony talk about his story about his mom beating him and literally like washing his mouth out with soap and just doing all these things, you can't relate. Just it's fucking Tony Robbins, dude. He's not real human. It's this weird alien guy. It's no.
He's like superhuman.
Yeah, exactly. So I just once I knew I had my story that people could relate to, even though they hadn't been, arrested for attempted armed robbery. I always share my story is my story, but maybe you've gotten a divorce. Maybe you got fired from a job. Maybe you got picked on as a kid. It doesn't matter. Whatever your story is, it's the same as my story of going to jail. It's created this story. It created this voice in the back of our heads that makes us doubt ourselves, question ourselves, and what we're truly capable of. And when we can teach that little voice to shut the fuck up, man, holy shit, the world is just our oyster. We can do anything. So it was just through that whole process of me just putting myself in, number one, in rooms with other people. And then, you know what? I can't find those people here locally. So let me create my own group. And then just seeing slowly over the course of time, I can do this. It's just having that trust that no matter what the fuck happens, I will figure this out. We're going to figure this out together. And if you can put yourself in a space where you just allow yourself just that tiny little bit of trust, just believe just for a second that it's even humanly possible that you can do this, then it's anything's possible.
Obsessed. I'm obsessed. I love this. And you hear about that all the time. They say if you can't find the room you're looking for, maybe you're the one that's meant to create it. And I know you guys, I know that sounds like so much work, and we're not going to lie. It kind of is. Being one of them, quote unquote, like somebody in the room versus the one facilitating it, there is a huge difference. Like as a business owner, being the owner versus working in my past life, my salons, it's different. Right? When you go from peer to peer to like being the head facilitator or the person that everyone's looking to for maybe the answers or the guidance or, the flow of the room. I love that you just owned it and you're like, I'm not a coach. I'm not a facilitator. I'm brand new. I put this together. Let's see what we can create. I mean, that alone in of itself is like so powerful to the mindset of like getting out of your own way to build something that you want and not having to have the whole picture before you took action, right? Everybody wants that clarity and to know that something's going to work before they do it. And we hear stories all over the board from my friends Angie Lee, who her first event, 2 people showed up. One was her mom. It's like same when you start a podcast, you get 5 downloads and you don't even know who they are because in podcast land, it doesn't have anybody's name like it does when people like your posts on social media. I still put out content on social media that gets no comments, hardly any likes. And it's still to this day, like, I'm like, okay, well, that didn't land, or the algorithm's off today. It's not going to stop me from continuing to share my message, to get on stories. There's always a glitch, right? We got on and the internet was a little glitchy today. I tried to post a story this morning and like half of it got chopped off. I'm like, either you can redo it or you can just post half a story. I'm like, redo it. I've been having issues with my Instagram for the last couple of weeks and I'm like, I could easily go dark and just like not. And these are the little resistance pieces that I'm like, no, the identity of who I've assumed is the person who's going to keep doing the thing until it's done.
Yeah.
And that is a mindset in of itself, but it's also an identity. How do you identify as someone who just tries or someone who is actually going to see things through? And so for the listeners now that are maybe like, oh, this is kind of me. I've been dealing with a lot of this myself, and I probably have a lot more work to do around, assuming the identity of that of which I want to become or be more like. What are some action steps that people can take after they listen to this podcast right now to just kind of step into that place?
It's really, and I saw it on your stories. I don't remember exactly what it was this morning, but you had something about doing the things that nobody can take away from you. So for me, it's those small daily little habits. Everything really revolves around the mindset, or it revolves around the thoughts that you're creating every single day. But to me, it's the consistency. It's the small daily actions that you're taking, that you're showing up for yourself over and over and reinforcing that identity. Because you can sit here. I've always had a problem with affirmations, because what you hear most often is sit in front of the mirror and say, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich. I can fucking sit here all day long and say, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, but I'm gonna get off my fucking ass and go talk to somebody or try to put some product out there. I'm never gonna be rich. That money's not just gonna drop out of the sky and land on my desk. I've got to do the work. And so if you're saying I'm a powerful CEO in your company, what are you doing to reinforce that belief? Yes, do the affirmations, say those things to yourself all the time. And no matter what happens, always hold on to that belief. But then also take those small daily actions, because every single time you show up for yourself to get on, a call like this, or to post that reel, or to have a sales conversation with somebody, or to do a webinar when nobody shows up and still go through the whole thing just to practice it, because you know it's going to make you better the next time when two people show up, and it's going to make you better the next time when four people show up. When you do those things, you're constantly reinforcing that identity and that belief in yourself again, that on a foundational level, I am that person that shows up. I am that person that can trust myself to do the work no matter what. And as long as I do that, and as long as I show up every single day and do that work and don't beat myself up over it doesn't go well, but just learn from it, grow from it. Nobody's perfect. Even fucking Tony Robbins. We go back to the freak, Tony Robbins. He still has bad days. He still has challenging days. Every single one of us have challenging days. But if we can just show up every single day and learn from what happened, not beat ourselves up over it, give ourselves grace, allow us that freedom just to fail, because failure is not a fucking bad thing. Failure is an amazing thing. And it's a necessary step to get where you want to go. And don't take it personally. Dude, you've got this. I keep saying it over and over. You can do anything when you allow yourself that freedom. And also, I think a lot of it comes back to the fear of judgment, the fear of what other people are saying about you, because that's what holds so many people back is, what if
Yeah.
I post this and if I say something stupid or somebody sees it as something stupid, they don't really connect with what I'm saying, then, oh my gosh, they're going to judge me. Nobody's going to like me and I'm not going to make any money and I'm going to die. You've been in the Tony Robbins world or around those kind of spaces where it ultimately comes back to the fear of we're going to die because the community is going to shun us, and it's not going to happen. It's
The
not
embarrassment,
going
all
to.
of the things. Yeah, that's been a big conversation inside my mastermind right now of, a lot of these women have had either highly successful careers previously and are now wanting to pivot more into, public speaking, podcasting, keynoting, guesting on podcasts, creating a course, doing something with their expertise, but in a newer way. And so that feeling of being new again, I know viscerally what that feels like. And I think in the beginning of the podcast for me, I was naive enough to think it was gonna feel like a lateral move, like, that I was gonna go from being really successful in the hair space to, like, "Of course I got this," like, but they were awful. They were awful, and I didn't care, and I was like, "I gotta get the reps in." I knew that, like, in order to get good I couldn't cut hair very well when I first started. I could barely cut a straight line, let alone not cut my own finger, and so I knew that after 20 plus years, like, how good I had gotten and how quickly, if you focus on something, you can grow it intentionally by going to classes, studying, practicing, getting your reps in. They talk about 10,000 hours. I'm like, in 20 years, I'm sure it's been way more than that. So when I pulled that pressure back and I was like, it's okay to be new. It's okay to fudge up. And we even talked about like posting things that are with you, like maybe stuttering a little bit or not saying it perfectly or not over editing yourself
Yeah.
to the point where you're not posting anything because you're like, I just can't get it out right. Or I don't quite know what my random yap of the day is going to like lead to. This has to make sense. And all of your content doesn't have to make sense. Now, I think more than ever, we want things that are less polished and perfect. When we mentioned earlier about the AI and the things like that, you can tell now when something's written by AI. You can tell when somebody's used a script that's written by AI. And I've had to force myself to get back into my emails and like write like a human. And same with my podcast episodes. I'm like, I just want to have real raw conversations again with real people. And I want to bring a lot of value and I want to teach people things. But at the end of the day, like the things that I can go and write a script about on ChatGPT is the same thing you guys can Google and learn how to do on your own as well. But the things that you can't find are these deeper conversations with real people who have had real lived life experiences. And just hearing James talk about the room didn't exist. So I went on meetup.com and I found these handful of people that wanted to like learn the same thing I did. So I couldn't find it. So I built it. That's how I've created the events I've had here. And again, why like even my podcast has pivoted from specifically starting in the beauty industry to pivoting into entrepreneurship and then now full on like it's a personal brand type of focused podcast because it's evolved with me and my growth. And that's such a cool thing is that we get to take our business with us and we get to take people with us. So the women in the room, talking about how they still feel like they're self-editing, and I'm like, really at the core of it, It's because I think you're afraid to say things differently than you've always said them. So maybe in one business this worked, and now maybe you're showing a little bit more of your spiritual side or your woo side, as some of the girls were calling it. And for you, that feels cringy and weird, but it's true to who you are. And so I'm like, you guys have to be able to let yourself show all parts of you, especially when you're building a personal brand, but especially when you want to be known as a thought leader. You know, those are the kind of things that are gonna make or break and be the differentiator between you and somebody else, because everyone's got a great story at the end of the day, but if you can't tell it and you can't share it, like, you're kind of gonna get lost.
As you were saying that, one of the things just popped up in my head. I think one of the biggest challenges with this is because we live in this social media world where if I share something, I get instant feedback on if people connect with it or not. We don't have that gap between me creating this thing, putting it out of the world, and just letting it go. It's no, the second I post it, 30 seconds later, I'm looking, did anybody like it yet? Anybody like it yet? 5 minutes like, anybody like it yet? Anybody like it yet? And so we're judging those thoughts and those feelings that are really true to us, but we're instantly judging it based on other people's perspective of it, their version of, well, did they like this? Did they not like this? I don't fucking care. I've heard this somewhere else, so I definitely am not the person to say it. But if you're not feeding me, or you're not fucking me. I don't care what you think. Honestly, and that's what I've gotten to the point of. If you look in your life, the things that bring you the most happiness, the most joy, it's when you stop worrying about what anybody else thinks and you just do your thing. Maybe people love it, maybe people don't love it, but you have just put yourself out there truly, authentically, openly, honestly, and just let go of all that. In your
Yeah,
rooms with friends. I mean, that's why you love being with your friends, is because you can just be yourself. So if we can learn to let go of judging the value of anything based on the number of likes, saves, reshares, all of that, and just judge it based on, did it bring me joy in creating this? Do I truly feel this is of value and that somebody out there somewhere is going to find this someday and it's going to make a meaningful change in their life? Then let it all go and be able to be so much more free if you can just do that.
I love it, James. You're awesome. You guys go follow James at The Real James Dunn on Instagram, and I know you got a little freebie for the listener, so tell us about that and why we should go download it.
Yeah, so it's called the Daily Roadmap. And what we talked about a little bit earlier is those small daily habits. It's really staying focused on the priority things. It's gratitude, it's journaling, it's meditation, it's exercise. It's those little bitty steps that you're taking every day to reinforce that identity of who you are and that powerful version of you are. And they don't rely on anybody else's judgment. Did I exercise today? Okay, cool. I know that is me. Did I meditate today? So I got in my own mind and, de-stress a little bit. Okay, cool. That's me. My journaling. Again, I'm getting into my own thoughts.
Yeah.
What am I grateful for? It's all these things. And I also made it fun where you track them, got a number system so you can talk about how many miles you got. Cause I'm a runner. I've run a few marathons. And so I love to tie things into where you can gamify it a little bit, make it a little fun. But yeah, it's a free download. Would love for people to use it. I use it every single day to help make sure I'm staying focused on the most important things in my life, not falling into the trap of, at the end of the day, I've done 100 things, but I didn't move the needle at all because it's all that stupid busy work that looks really good on the outside,
Amen.
but
Yep.
deep down, it didn't do anything for you.
100%. And I love that you ended that on that note for us, because you guys, that is one of the most real things that you need to self-assess is, are you staying busy just to stay busy, or are you actually moving the needle in the right direction? So go download this freebie, make it fun. When you track things, then you can really track your growth. And I know that they sound simple and you're like, oh, I might not need a tracker. I know I worked out. I know I did this. But when you look back at the end of a week and you can see what you've accomplished, I promise you it's going to make you feel some type of way. And you're going to want to level up each week and like make yourself try a little bit harder and do a little bit more. And in that, your progress will come. In that, your results will come, right? You're going to start looking better, feeling better. You're going to have more results from, I made 3 more phone calls this week than I did last week. I reached out to a handful more people to talk about being on their podcast. Like, there's so many things that I think if you don't track and you don't acknowledge the little wins, like, it takes away from the bigger ones because you're so quick to move on to the next thing, and so many of us are high achievers, so many of us want the thing now, but it's like, what are you willing to do consistently, time and time again, in order to not only get the results, but keep them? Because like James said earlier, like, you might excel really quickly and have success somewhere, but if you don't know how to hold that and maintain not only the identity, but the belief that you deserve to be there, you deserve to make the money that you're starting to make or that you want to make, or that you deserve to have 25 to 50 people showing up on your master classes or in your masterminds or whatever that looks like, you won't be able to hold it. And so really doing these, I think, disciplined act and tracking it is so key. For me now, it's second nature. I still love to like write in my journal what I got done. I write down what I do at the gym. You know, not every single set like the gym guys, but I'm like, okay, I did this. I did okay. I worked out 5 times this week. I went to yoga 2 times this week. I ate really good. You know, I did X amount of podcasts. I showed up. I got ready. You know, 6 out of the 7 days out of the week. Those sort of things, they might not feel like that big, but they are the needle movers. And if you're forward facing and you're on social media presenting as a personal brand, people want to build trust with people that they see have that in their life. Those are the sort of things that people aspire to have in their life too. So by you just doing even these simple things and sharing them, that alone can be like the foundation that you build everything else on. So go get this freebie, go get in James Worlds, follow him. James, you're awesome. I love that you cuss as much as I do.
Yes,
My
absolutely.
people,
I'm one
my people. Any last parting words you want to leave with the listeners of the show?
This isn't necessarily last words, but I have a T-shirt. I got to find it somewhere because I put it up. I wanted to find it because I had a reel I wanted to make for one of my haters on TikTok because he did not like the
Yeah.
fact that I cuss so much. But it says "fuck you, you fucking fuck," and I don't know what I did with it. I've got it put away somewhere, and I want to get it back out. I want to make a reel just for him and tag him in it. But anyway,
Tag me in it too.
there you go.
I think what's so cool is I have a client, she was in her she must be, like, closer to 80 at this point now, and she bought me a little it's a gold bracelet very similar to I'm wearing, like, this little cuff bracelet, and in the inside it said, "She believed she could like, I believe she could, so she fucking did," or something
Yeah.
like that, like, and I was like, even my clients, my
Yes.
in-person, like, know that, and that's one of the things that I'll tell a really quick story, you guys. When I started the podcast, it was called the Beauty Inspires Beauty Podcast, and for some reason, at around episode 40, I started to feel very out of alignment with, like, how I was showing up, what I was speaking to, and I was talking to my brother, and he's like, "Well, what are you not doing on the show that's making you feel the resistance?" And I go, "I don't know." So I had to sit and think about it, and I was like, "I'm trying to be too perfect, too polished, and I'm trying not to cuss."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, I looked at your thing, you already have explicit on your thing, you had that on, like, your 2nd episode." I was like, "Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we're already labeled as explicit, so, like, go for it." And I think there's a time and a place to use, like, you know, language like that if you're passionate, but anybody who knows me knows that, like, I do, and I also want to be unfiltered as much as possible, and when you are passionate about something, when it is something that you are really, like, excited to share, that comes out sometimes.
Yeah.
And I know it's not for everybody, but you and I, we're not for everybody, right? I think we're a little bit like the spicier ones. We're gonna be like the champagne and like the really, really strong coffee. And some of you guys like your tea watered down. So we might not be for you, and that's okay. And you guys need to own that unapologetically. And if you listen to this show, I'm sure you're here for it. So let me know your takeaways on this episode. How are you working on your identity? Go get James's freebie. We would love to hear your thoughts on this, how you're working on building the identity so that you can become the person that you know you're meant to be. Sending you guys so much love. James, thank you so much for your time. You guys go get in his world. I'm happy that we're connected, and we'll see you guys next week on the Jessica Bergio Show.